Adani Bakar adjusted her gold wristwatch as she stepped out of the Transcorp Hilton Hotel in Ibadan. The evening air was warm, carrying the familiar scent of roasted corn and suya from nearby street vendors. Her latest catering event had been a massive success. The governor's daughter's wedding reception, with over 2,000 guests. Every dish had been perfectly prepared, every guest satisfied, and every detail executed flawlessly. At 33, Adani was the undisputed queen of catering in Oyo State. Her company, Bakar Catering Services, had grown from a small home-based operation to the most sought-after catering empire in Ibadan. Politicians, business moguls, and celebrities all clamored for her services. She had 6 industrial kitchens across the city, over 200 staff members, and a fleet of refrigerated trucks that bore her company's elegant logo. "Madam, the car is ready," called out Segan, her driver, as he held open the door of her pristine white Toyota Land Cruiser. Adani nodded, sliding into the leather seat with the satisfaction of another successful event behind her. The back seat was her mobile office, iPad, documents, and her favorite leather notebook where she jotted down ideas for new recipes and business strategies. As Segan navigated through the evening traffic along Dugby Road, Adani's phone buzzed with congratulatory messages. The governor's wife had already posted photos on Instagram, praising Bakar Catering Services. Her assistant, Kemi, had sent updates about 3 new contract inquiries that had come in during the event. Life was good and getting better. "Segan, please stop at that traffic light properly," Adani said, noticing they were approaching the busy intersection near Cocoa House. The traffic was heavy as usual, with Okada riders weaving between cars and pedestrians crossing at every available gap. As they waited at the red light, Adani rolled down her window halfway to get some fresh air. The air conditioning was working perfectly, but she enjoyed the sounds of the city. The honking, the chatter, the life that pulsed through Ibadan's streets. That's when she saw him. From the corner of her eye, a figure approached her car. At first, she thought it was another street beggar or windscreen cleaner, but something about his movement caught her attention. The man was tall and lean, with wild, unkempt hair that looked like it hadn't seen a comb in months. His clothes were tattered, a faded blue shirt that might have once been decent, and black trousers with holes at the knees. His feet were bare, dusty from walking on asphalt and dirt roads. But it was his eyes that made Adani pause. They weren't the vacant, distant eyes she expected from someone who appeared to be mentally unstable. Instead, they were sharp, focused, almost piercing in their intensity. The man walked directly to her window and leaned down slightly. Adani's first instinct was to roll up the window completely, but something made her hesitate. "Auntie Big Madam," the man said, his voice surprisingly clear despite his appearance. "I need to tell you something very important. Listen well." Adani looked at him skeptically. Segan had noticed the man and was already reaching for the door handle, ready to get out and chase him away. "For the next 6 months," the man continued, his voice becoming more urgent, "don't give money from your hand to anybody's hand. You hear me? No hand-to-hand money giving." Adani blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" The man's eyes became even more intense. "If you want to help people, if you want to give money, use bank transfer, use mobile money, use anything. But never give cash from your hand directly to someone else's hand. Something bad will happen if you do." "This man is mad," Segan muttered from the front seat, starting to open his door. But the man wasn't finished. He placed his hand on the car door and leaned closer to the window. "I know you think I'm crazy. Everyone thinks Uncle Crazy is just a madman. But I see things, sister. I see what's coming for you. Someone close to you, someone you trust, someone you give money to regularly. They will use your own generosity to destroy you." Adani's heart began to beat faster. There was something unsettling about the man's certainty, the way he spoke as if he knew her personally. 6 months," he repeated, holding up 6 fingers. Count them well. January, February, March, April, May, June. During these months, no hand-to-hand money giving. If you ignore this warning, you will lose everything you have built. The traffic light turned green, and cars behind them began honking impatiently. Segan revved the engine, eager to drive away from what he clearly considered a troublesome encounter. "Auntie," the man said one final time, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, "I have delivered my message. What you do with it is your choice. But remember, Uncle Crazy warned you." With that, he stepped back from the car and melted into the crowd of pedestrians as if he had never been there at all. A dunny quickly rolled up her window as Segan drove off. Her heart was still racing, and she found herself looking back through the rear window, trying to spot the strange man in the crowd. "Madam, don't mind that crazy man," Segan said, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. "These mad people, they just talk anyhow. You know how Ibadan is. Full of all kinds of characters." Adunni nodded absently, but her mind was still processing what had just happened. The man had called himself Uncle Crazy, and he had seemed to know things about her. Her success, her habit of giving money to people. But how could a madman know such details about her life? "Segan, have you ever seen that man before?" she asked. "Which man, madam?" "The one who just spoke to me. The one with the wild hair." Segan shrugged. "Oh, that one. Yes, I've seen him around. People call him Uncle Crazy. He's been on these streets for years. Sometimes he talks to himself, sometimes he tells people strange things. Most people just ignore him. But does he ever know things? Personal things about people?" Segan laughed. "Madam, all these mad people, they just talk. Sometimes they get lucky and say something that makes sense. Then people think they have special powers. Don't worry yourself about him." Adunni settled back into her seat, trying to dismiss the encounter. But the man's words kept echoing in her mind. "No hand-to-hand money giving. Someone close to you will use your generosity to destroy you." It was ridiculous, of course. She had built her entire reputation on generosity and treating people well. She regularly gave bonuses to her hard-working staff, helped family members who were struggling, donated to her church, and never turned away a beggar who approached her with a genuine need. Her success had come partly because of her good heart and her willingness to share her blessings. How could her generosity possibly be used against her? By the time they reached her house in the prestigious Olyayol estate, Adunni had mostly pushed the strange encounter to the back of her mind. Her beautiful duplex stood behind high walls and an electric gate, surrounded by well-manicured gardens. The house was her pride and joy, a symbol of how far she had come from her humble beginnings in Saki town. "Good evening, Ma," greeted Bayo, her gateman, as he opened the gate. "How was the event?" "Very successful, Bayo. Thank you," Adunni replied with a smile as she stepped out of the car. She reached into her purse and pulled out a crisp 5,000 Nigerian nairas note. "Here, take this for your hard work this week." Bayo's face lit up with gratitude as he accepted the money. "Thank you so much, Ma. God bless you." It was only after she had handed him the money that Uncle Crazy's warning flashed through her mind. Hand-to-hand money giving. She had just done exactly what the madman had warned her against. Adunni shook her head and walked toward her front door. She was being ridiculous, allowing a madman's ramblings to affect her thoughts. Inside her house, her domestic staff greeted her warmly. Folake, her housekeeper, had prepared her favorite dinner, pounded yam with egusi soup. Adunni ate alone in her spacious dining room, reviewing the day's events and planning for the next day's activities. Her phone rang as she was finishing dinner. It was Kemi, her assistant and right-hand woman. "Good evening, Ma." Kemi's cheerful voice came through the phone. "I wanted to update you on those new inquiries we received." "Yes, tell me," Adunni said, walking to her home office. The first one is from Chief Adelic. He wants us to cater his son's traditional wedding next month. He's talking about 1,500 guests and a budget of 25 million Nigerian nairas. Aduni's eyes widened. That's excellent news. The second inquiry is even better, Kemi continued. It's from the state government. They want to discuss a long-term contract for all their official events. State dinners, conferences, VIP receptions. The initial discussion is about a 500 million Nigerian nairas contract spread over 18 months. Adani nearly dropped her phone. 500 million Nigerian nairas. Are you serious? Very serious, Ma. The commissioner's office will call you directly tomorrow to set up a meeting. After ending the call, Adani sat in her office chair, overwhelmed with excitement. A 500 million Nigerian nairas government contract would be the biggest deal in her company's history. It would cement her position as the undisputed leader in Nigeria's catering industry. She thought briefly about Uncle Crazy's warning, then dismissed it completely. This was her time, her season of unprecedented success. No madman's superstitions would dampen her joy. The next morning, Adani woke up early and prepared for what would be one of the most important days of her career. She chose her best business suit, a navy blue Ankara outfit that she had custom-made by Lagos's finest tailor. Her jewelry was minimal but elegant, and her makeup was flawless. As she was leaving the house, she encountered Folake, who was sweeping the compound. "Ma, my daughter's school fees is due today," Folake said hesitantly. "I was wondering if you could help me with 15,000 Nigerian nairas. I will work extra hours to pay you back." Adani didn't hesitate. Folake had been with her for 3 years and was completely trustworthy. She reached into her purse and counted out 15,000 Nigerian nairas in cash. "Don't worry about paying me back," Adani said, placing the money directly into Folake's palm. "Just make sure your daughter continues to do well in school." Folake's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "Thank you, Ma. God will continue to bless you." As Adani got into her car, Uncle Crazy's face flashed in her mind again. She had just given money hand to hand again. But looking at Folake's genuine gratitude, she felt only satisfaction. This was who she was. A woman who helped others succeed. She would not let a madman's warnings change her generous nature. The meeting with the state government officials went even better than expected. The commissioner himself was present, along with his deputy and several other high-ranking officials. They had clearly done their research on Bakare catering services and were impressed with her track record. "Mrs. Bakare," the commissioner said, "we've been looking for a catering partner who can handle large-scale events with consistent quality. From what we've seen, your company is exactly what we need." The contract details were discussed in detail. Not only would Adani's company handle all major state events, but they would also be the preferred caterer for visiting dignitaries and international conferences hosted by the state government. "We're prepared to offer you an 18-month contract worth 500 million Nigerian nairas," the deputy commissioner announced. "The first phase will begin immediately with the upcoming African Governors Summit that we're hosting next month." Adani could barely contain her excitement. This contract would allow her to expand into other states, maybe even other countries. She was on the verge of becoming a major player in Nigeria's hospitality industry. "We're very interested," Adani said professionally, though her heart was racing with joy. "When can we formalize this agreement?" "Next week," the commissioner replied. "We'll have our legal team prepare the contract documents, and you can review them with your lawyers. If everything is satisfactory, we can sign by Friday." As the meeting concluded, Adani felt like she was walking on air. Outside the government secretariat, she called Kemi to share the good news. "Kemi, it's confirmed. The 500 million Nigerian nairas contract is ours." Kemi screamed with excitement on the other end of the phone. "Madam, this is incredible. We've hit the jackpot. I want you to organize a special meeting with all our senior staff tomorrow morning, Adunni instructed. We need to start planning for this massive expansion. We'll need more equipment, more staff, maybe even new facilities. That evening, Adunni drove to her mother's house in Bir, one of Ibadan's older neighborhoods. Her mother, Mama Bakare, was a retired teacher who had single-handedly raised Adunni and her two siblings after their father's death. "Mama, I have incredible news," Adunni announced as she entered the modest two-bedroom house where she had grown up. Her mother, a dignified woman in her early 60s, smiled warmly. "Sit down, my daughter. Tell me." Adunni explained the government contract, watching her mother's eyes widen with pride and amazement. 500 million Nigerian nairas. Mama Bakare repeated. "Adunni, God has truly blessed you beyond measure. Mama, this means I can finally build you that new house I've been promising. And I want to start a scholarship fund for brilliant students who can't afford university fees." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "You have always had such a good heart, Adunni. Even as a child, you would share your food with other children who had nothing." Before leaving, Adunni reached into her purse and pulled out 50,000 Nigerian nairas in cash. "Mama, take this for your upkeep and for anything you need," she said, placing the money in her mother's hands. "My daughter, you don't need to. Mama, please. It makes me happy to take care of you." As she drove home that night, Adunni felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She was successful, she was generous, and she was about to achieve even greater heights. Uncle Crazy's warning seemed like a distant, irrelevant memory. Over the next few weeks, Adunni threw herself into preparing for the government contract. She hired additional staff, purchased new equipment, and even rented a larger facility to handle the increased volume of work. During this period, she continued her usual pattern of generosity. She gave 20,000 Nigerian nairas to her cousin Tund when he needed money for his business. She handed 10,000 Nigerian nairas to her church's security guard who was struggling with medical bills. She gave 5,000 Nigerian nairas to a beggar outside her office who told her a heartbreaking story about his sick child. Each time, she gave the money directly from her hand to theirs, just as she had always done. The contract signing was scheduled for a Friday morning in March. Adunni arrived early at the government secretariat, dressed in her finest attire and accompanied by her lawyer. The documents had been reviewed, and everything was in perfect order. As she sat in the waiting room, her phone buzzed with a message from Kemi. "Ma, the catering equipment for the governor's summit just arrived. Everything is ready." At exactly 10 a.m., Adunni was ushered into the commissioner's office. The atmosphere was formal but friendly. The contract documents were spread out on a large conference table, and several government officials were present as witnesses. "Mrs. Bakare," the commissioner said with a smile, "welcome to what I believe will be a very fruitful partnership." Adunni picked up the pen to sign the contract. This was the moment she had been working toward her entire career. Just as she was about to put pen to paper, the commissioner's phone rang. He answered it with a frown. "What? Are you sure? When did this happen?" The room fell silent as everyone watched the commissioner's expression change from confusion to concern to alarm. "I see. Yes, I understand. We'll have to postpone everything." He hung up the phone and looked directly at Adunni. "Mrs. Bakare, I'm afraid we have a problem. There's been an incident involving one of your recent events." Adunni's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of incident?" "The health ministry has received reports of food poisoning from the governor's daughter's wedding last month. Several guests have been hospitalized, and 2 are in critical condition." The pen slipped from Adunni's fingers. "But that's impossible. We followed all safety protocols. Everything was prepared fresh, and we maintained cold chain throughout the event." "I'm sure you did," the commissioner said sympathetically. "But until this matter is resolved, We cannot proceed with the contract signing. The state government cannot enter into an agreement with a catering company that is under investigation for food safety violations. Adunni felt the room spinning around her. But the investigation will show that we did nothing wrong. This is probably just a coincidence, or maybe the guests got sick from something else. Perhaps, the commissioner said. But you understand our position. We'll have to wait for the investigation to conclude before we can move forward. As Adunni left the government secretariat that day, her mind was reeling. How could this be happening? Her company had never had a single case of food poisoning in over 10 years of operation. She maintained the highest standards of hygiene and food safety. Her phone started ringing before she even reached her car. It was Kemi, and she sounded panicked. "Ma, we have a big problem. The health ministry officials are at our main kitchen. They're shutting us down pending investigation." "What? They can't do that." "They can, Ma. They've sealed the facility and taken samples of everything. They said we cannot operate until the investigation is complete." Adunni drove straight to her main kitchen facility, but when she arrived, she found yellow tape across the entrance and a health ministry seal on the door. A small crowd of her employees stood outside, looking confused and worried. "Madam, what is happening?" asked Chef Mutiu, her head chef who had been with her since the early days. "I don't know," Adunni replied honestly. "But we'll figure this out. Don't worry." But privately she was very worried. With her main facility shut down and the government contract postponed, she was facing a crisis unlike anything she had ever experienced. The investigation dragged on for weeks. During this time, rumors spread throughout Ibadan's business community. Some of Adunni's regular clients began canceling their bookings, afraid to be associated with a company under investigation for food poisoning. Her lawyer assured her that the investigation would eventually clear her company of any wrongdoing, but the damage to her reputation was already significant. Then, on a Tuesday morning in April, Adunni received a call that changed everything. "Mrs. Becaire, this is Mr. Johnson from First Bank. I'm calling about your company's loan account." Adunni had taken out a 150 million Nigerian nairas loan 6 months earlier to expand her operations. The monthly payments were substantial but manageable given her company's income. "Yes, what about it?" "I'm afraid we need to discuss your account status. Due to recent developments with your business, the bank's credit committee has decided to recall the loan immediately." Adunni's blood ran cold. "What do you mean, recall the loan?" "The full amount of 150 million Nigerian nairas is now due within 30 days. If you cannot pay, we will be forced to seize your collateral." The collateral included her house, her cars, and all her business equipment. "But I've never missed a payment," Adunni protested. "My account is in good standing." "Yes, but the recent publicity and the ongoing investigation have changed your risk profile. The bank cannot continue to extend credit to a business that may not survive these challenges." After hanging up, Adunni sat in her office chair, staring blankly at the wall. How had everything gone so wrong so quickly? Just a few weeks ago, she was on top of the world, about to sign the biggest contract of her career. Now her main facility was shut down, her reputation was in tatters, and the bank was demanding immediate repayment of a massive loan. Her phone rang again. This time it was her insurance company. "Mrs. Becaire, we're calling about your business insurance policy. Due to the ongoing investigation, we're suspending your coverage effective immediately." "You can't do that. I've been paying premiums faithfully for years." "I'm sorry, but it's a standard clause in the policy. Coverage is suspended during investigations that could result in criminal charges." Criminal charges. The thought had never occurred to Adunni. She had assumed this was just a civil matter, a misunderstanding that would be cleared up eventually. That evening, as she sat alone in her house, Adunni found herself thinking about Uncle Crazy for the first time in weeks. The madman had warned her about giving money hand to hand, claiming that someone would use her generosity against her. But how could her generosity have caused this disaster? The food poisoning allegations, the bank loan recall, the insurance suspension. None of these seemed connected to her habit of giving cash to people. Yet the timing was eerily coincidental. Uncle Crazy had said 6 months. It was now April, exactly 4 months since his warning. And her life was falling apart. The next morning, Adunni woke up to find uniformed men at her gate. They were from the bank, accompanied by court officials, and they had come to seize her assets. "Mrs. Becker, we have a court order authorizing us to take possession of this property and all assets listed as collateral for your loan." Adunni watched in disbelief as strangers walked through her beautiful home, itemizing everything she owned. Her cars, her furniture, her jewelry. Everything was being catalogued for seizure. "Please," she begged the lead official. "Give me more time. I can arrange payment." "I'm sorry, ma'am. The order is final. You have 24 hours to remove your personal belongings. Then we take possession." As the officials left, Adunni collapsed onto her couch, overwhelmed by the magnitude of her situation. In just a few weeks, she had lost her business, her reputation, her home, and nearly everything she owned. Her phone rang. It was her mother. "Adunni, I just heard from the neighbors. What is happening?" Through tears, Adunni explained the situation to her mother. When she finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "My daughter," Mama Becker said finally, "come home. We will face this together." That night, Adunni packed a single suitcase with her most essential belongings. Everything else, the symbols of her success, the fruits of years of hard work, would be taken by the bank in the morning. As she prepared to leave the house that had been her sanctuary, her pride and joy, Adunni found herself wondering about Uncle Crazy's warning once again. Had the madman somehow foreseen this disaster? Was there really a connection between her generosity and her downfall? Or was this just a series of unfortunate coincidences that had nothing to do with a madman's ravings? Standing in her empty house, surrounded by boxes and memories, Adunni Becker faced the most difficult question of her life. What if Uncle Crazy had been right all along? Tomorrow she would have to start over with nothing. The empire she had built was gone, destroyed by forces she didn't understand. But one thing was certain. She would never forget the madman's warning, or the possibility that she had ignored the most important advice of her life. As she drove away from her house for the last time, Adunni couldn't help but wonder, was someone she trusted really responsible for her downfall? And if so, who could it be? The answers would have to wait. For now, she was just another person who had learned too late that sometimes, the most important warnings come from the most unlikely sources. Uncle Crazy had tried to save her, but she had been too proud, too successful, too sure of herself to listen. Now, as she headed back to her childhood home with nothing but a suitcase and a mountain of debt, Adunni realized that the real madness wasn't in Uncle Crazy's warning. The real madness was in ignoring it. The Journey is Far From Over Part 2 is coming, and this time there is more to unfold. Watch out.